Ivcn. We'll give some time for people to get on. Okay. Maybe we'll have a smaller group today. It's not.
I've seen some people starting to take vacations, so we may be getting hit with that.
I know that Melissa sent out a reminder, Jonathan, I think.
I just saw that she posted a Facebook reminder.
Yeah, I don't think there was an email, or
There
I'm not
was.
finding it myself.
Oh, I got an email.
Yeah,
She
email
did this morning.
reminder. She sent it out.
I'm facilitating too, so I should know, but I did not get the email.
I don't think you were on there.
Well, let me go grab the agenda then. Oh, thanks, Mark.
That just popped up in the chat.
Yeah, agenda's in the chat in case anyone didn't get it in any way. Okay, well, maybe we'll give it till 12:05 to let people get on since we're still a smaller group than usual, and we'll get started then. Actually, never mind. No one new has joined yet. We can get started. So hi, everybody. Welcome to Isla Vista Community Network. My name is Jonathan. I'm facilitating it today, but I'm not the person, or we rotate now. We're going to start our agenda, which is quick introductions, then an update from the IVCSD on what we're working on, and then updates from the county, from law enforcement, and then from associated students. And if anyone needs to be earlier, you can just let us know in the chat and we'll move you up just in case. And I think we do have a hard stop at 1, since there is something relevant to what's on the agenda, the hearing on racial equity for the County Board of Supervisors at 1 p.m. after this. So it'd be good for people to get on that. So we'll just do introductions. I'm going to go off the participants list, just as we usually do, call out your name. And then if you have, and just say hi to everybody. And if you have any quick things to mention that you're working on or want people to know about, now's the main time to do that. So we'll start with well, Deborah's first on my list. So go ahead, Deborah.
Isn't that the truth? Hi, everybody. Glad to be back. I was on a vacation and I don't have any update for you.
Cool. And then Gary and Tori.
Hello, everyone. Gary Gaston, UCSB Community Outreach on the Police Department. Currently, only thing we're working on a lot of stuff right now, but more I would say visually that we're working on is to see us via Zoom doing parent orientations and then there's parent socials. So people are getting to interact with the orientation and parent services, and we've been invited to work at that as well, so that we can just kind of meet people as they're getting to be new students and then answer questions from family members and parents of new students. So that's been on top of the list for me personally. So.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Tori Saunders, one of the community outreach officers here at UCSB Police Department, and I don't have anything to report. We got it all, but we'll put our email into the chat in case anybody needs to reach out to us. Please feel free. If you have questions, comments, concerns, we'll do our best to answer them, and if we cannot, we will get you the answer as soon as we can. Thank you.
Next is Justin.
Justin Schroeder with the Sheriff's Department, Community Resource Deputy for Atla Vista.
Aaron.
Aaron Jones, Director of the Educational Opportunity Program. Good morning or good afternoon.
Ash.
Hi, I'm Ash. I don't have anything else to say right now. Thank you.
Bianca.
Hi, everyone. Bianca Orozco with Standing Together to End Sexual Assault, and I have no updates.
Thank you. And Derek.
Hi, everyone. This is Derek Marzano, civilian member of the University Police Department Community Outreach Team.
George.
Hello, everybody. George Thurlow, UCSB.
Hey, Jay.
Jay Freeman, Isla Vista Community Services District and the Galita Valley Library Advisory Commission. I am not here representing either of those today.
Jeremy.
Jeremy Rourke, psychologist, food co-op board member, and Food Not Bombs volunteer.
Julia.
Hi. Hi, I'm Julia. I'm a part of Food Not Bombs and Bonfire Collective.
Lisa Osborne.
I am Lisa Osborne, KCSB Radio.
Our other Lisa.
Other Lisa here. Lisa Oglesby, Isla Vista Food Co-op Board of Directors President and Community Member. Thank you for having me.
Lori.
Hi, Lori Goodman, Isla Vista Youth Projects. I'm laughing at the Lisas. I grew up with so many Lisas. Every house had a Lisa. No new updates, but we are opening our Children's Center on Monday for our pre-K students to do a kindergarten readiness camp for 4 weeks. Let's hope we're able to keep it open.
Thanks. Mark.
Hi, everyone. Mark Vuksovich, him, his. I'm the chair of the Public Safety Commission, the AS Public Safety Commission, as well as a dedicated local community member. My only quick announcement is that last week you mentioned we were going to send out a survey this Thursday. We've pushed that 1 week, so that we will be sending out and pushing a mass survey as far and wide as possible next Thursday. So be ready for that, and that will go out in an email. Thank you. That's it for me.
Thank you. Melissa?
Hi, can you guys hear me okay? Perfect. I'm Melissa. I'm the Food Co-op's General Manager. our updates, there's a few actually. Most of you probably saw that the co-op did have our first positive COVID case last week. That was happening around the time of the Ivcn meeting, and we made our post after the meeting. I wanted to presence that as we're talking about increased attention to COVID and what we're dealing with in Isla Vista right now. We're really fortunate. We have great protocols. It was all very clear in what we shared. I'm happy to share more offline after the meeting, but you can see our post from last week. And if there's other people on the call that need some support because there's been so much challenging mixed communication between CDC and the local health department, we have a lot of really strong protocols because our HR manager has done an incredible job creating things that did not exist.
The trash checks, you got lemons in the front for.
Sorry. So that's one update. I'm happy to, not talk about that more now, but out of the meeting. And then also Co-op Curbside officially is EBT eligible. So that rolled out yesterday. So if you have folks that are more vulnerable that can't get out, especially now with more COVID, we can accept EBT in our morning pickups. They have to have the card present when they come to pick up the groceries. That's really, really important. That is the legal piece of how we're doing this. And then we also just started evening pickups to make it more accessible during the week, so 5 to 8 p.m. So those are 3 cool things happening at the co-op. Well, the COVID part wasn't that cool, but the follow-up was really good because we saw how effective our protocols are. We're very pro-mask at the co-op, and we really advocate for masks, and that is what is helping us. So thank you all. Check.
Thank you, Melissa. Naomi?
Naomi Kovacs with 3rd District Supervisor Joan Hartman's office.
And Omari?
Hello, everyone. Omari Pryor, UCSB's Alcohol and Drug Program.
Savannah?
Hi, good morning. My name is Savannah Lee. I work over with the Associated Students Pardell Center, so I'm just representing their program. Only update I have is that we're actively looking for any groups in the, Isla Vista community that is looking to receive free masks, either for distribution or just for whatever projects you're working on. So I'm just going to put my email in the chat for anybody that's interested. Thank you.
Lost my place. Spencer?
Hi, everyone. Spencer Brandt, Isla Vista CSD Board President.
And then Viviana?
Hi, Viviana Marzano, Office of Student Life/SEAL.
And Yasmin?
Hi, everyone. Associated Students, EVPLA, and I'm on the agenda, so I'll keep my updates for them.
Thank you. I think that's everybody. YouTube Live is the last one. It's not a person. That's Jay again. So the first thing on the agenda is Community Cares Conversation, IVCSD meeting follow-up. So Spencer or Jay, do you want to get this going? We have a lot of input we need from the community on how we are moving forward, but we do have a structure moving forward now. So now we can maybe have a better conversation since we maybe have more specific asks for what kind of feedback we want from people. So Spencer, do you want to?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks, Jonathan. We really appreciate this group as a way to try and better get feedback from the community about everything related to what's a really important conversation. I think it was plugged earlier, but the hearing that's happening beginning an hour from now about criminal justice reform in Santa Barbara County is it's an incredibly important topic right now. That hearing will be incredibly important because we've seen that due to the COVID crisis, our county has taken some preliminary steps that have really changed the way that the public safety and criminal justice system is working. And it's our task to try and sustain the parts of those that are really working well and fine tune those. So basically at our IVCSD conversation, we got some good feedback from the public, but also discussed that we sort of want to move forward in an action-oriented way. And the way that we want to do that is to bring various pieces of this puzzle to our board for consideration for research and collaboration. So pieces of that puzzle include, for example, sobering center. This is something that many of you may be familiar with. We've had various conversations over the years about how can we prevent students that are drunk from getting arrested and put in, in the incarceration system, but divert them to something that is more sort of treatment oriented and harm reduction oriented. There is a sobering center in our county that actually exists, and it's been started up over the last year or so using a grant from the state that is meant specifically for diverting people away from the jail system. And so this is an area where we want to make sure that it's being fully utilized to the fullest extent here in Isla Vista, especially on Friday and Saturday nights when we know that it's more likely that those types of arrests are going to be made, but also exploring if there is a need and if there is an opportunity for us to potentially grow a service like that. And maybe the original, I think, sobering center idea was to have one right here in Isla Vista. And that's something that we would definitely want to explore, as well as the CSD's role and collaboratively all of our roles in trying to get something like that on board. And then, of course, the other question that we've talked about is how can we create a model where we put, whether it's volunteers or non-sworn, community ambassadors into the community to respond to some of these nonviolent calls for service, specifically ones that are quality of life, neighborhood quality related calls, like loud music calls, or calls about parties, those sorts of things, because I think we are really operating, or I'm definitely operating off of the philosophy that we know that over enforcement of small infractions erodes community trust in law enforcement. And that's just not what we want. We want a public safety system in our community that inspires trust in our law enforcement officers, for them to be able to respond to these emergency situations with integrity. And we also want to be able to make sure that we are responding in the appropriate way each time that there is, a call for service that comes in. So basically, again, what our approach is to sort of consider these different pieces of the puzzle separately, and also solicit ideas from the community about additional, pieces of the puzzle that we can be considering, because I think that there is a wide variety of different types of approaches across the country, and there's a lot of innovation going on right now in terms of public safety, and we definitely want to be open to considering our role in all of those different types of innovations. Like we've seen in some cities, they have talked about sort of, I think in Minneapolis, it was that they sort of abolished their police department and then started over with a new model. And while I think most people are focused on the language of that, sort of the word abolish, it would be interesting, for example, to see what sort of innovations come out of that and what that actually looks like, practically speaking. So I think I'll stop there and, throw it over to Jay, who's in our working group, or Jonathan, if either of you have anything to add, and really open it up for community feedback.
Yeah, just, what our board really wants to do is, instead of having like one meeting where we talk about this, or 2 meetings, we want to have a lot of our meetings over the next foreseeable future have agenda items around the issue of police brutality and anti-racism, and just how we can make Isla Vista safer in other ways. And so they wanted us to put together a list of actionable topics and agenda items for our board to have. So that could be a lot of different things. A sobering center would be one, to armed versus unarmed, to the kinds of policies that are in place. So it could be a whole range of topics that we can then take action on. So any input from people on what you'd like us to have on our agenda, we'll take it in, and then we're going to come up with like a list and a calendar. So then you would know, October 15th, they're talking about this one topic that I'm really interested in. So you could come back to it. And the first two are, like Spencer mentioned, the sobering center. And then the second one is data on the top public safety issues facing Isla Vista. So Deborah and I also met with Justin to start hearing about what data is possible to be produced. So also let us know on, we're going to have a separate conversation in our group and board on what kind of data we want to request and how do we want to structure that. So what people are interested in learning about data wise, that kind of feedback is also welcome.
Hey, Jonathan, did you describe the data you're referring to with regards to safety issues?
We don't have, that's the thing, is we don't have a request yet. Our board just said we want to have a meeting with a agenda item with the data on the top public safety issues facing Isla Vista. So we still need to find that and, actually make a request. And so that's the thing. We haven't done that yet. We want to get some feedback and ideas on, we want to make a good request for data.
If I could add on to that real quick, the only thing that I would add is that I think our goal is to see how things have changed in the last year, because we know that COVID has changed a lot of things in terms of the number of citations and arrests that are being given out, and to be able to compare that to a point in the past.
This is an agenda item on this agenda that I honestly didn't realize we were going to be doing the deep dive conversation today until right before the meeting. As again, something where I from my perspective, I think there's a lot of interesting background information and structure that can be brought to a conversation like this, the extent to which that's helpful going forward. If something was like me to ever just try to describe that, is something I would of course want more preparation for. But there are things that one ask, I guess, that I sort of have is the idea of things that we either think are currently going wrong, that we would let that like concrete things that we've seen that we would like to figure out a way to prevent going forward, things that we have felt it was something to fit into the framework of what Spencer was just at. We spoke with the data, for example, questions that you've had about usages of law enforcement in the area that have not been concretely explained in the past, and so things that then can be brought into the conversations that people are having with with Justin about data. Justin at our last meeting was very graciously offered just anything we wanted. So this is a very exciting moment in order to ask him all the questions we've ever had about law enforcement that we felt that we weren't able to get answers on before. And yeah, those I guess the two things that are coming to my mind right now.
I want to very briefly touch on the sobering center issue. I know this is an idea that came up, and actually when Doreen was the 3rd district supervisor, she had a staff who was researching this and looking into it. And my fiance actually helped run the sobering center in downtown Santa Barbara before the police department just unfunded it in June. So they're not there anymore. But so he was involved in that conversation with the 3rd district supervisor's office at the time. And there was a lot of, my understanding is there was a lot of reluctance or pushback from UCSB to have a sobering center in IV or to be involved with that. So you might want to look back into the history of that before jumping in to a new discussion about it, because there is history about that. So
Yeah, so a couple background pieces for people who are well, one of the interesting things about the city of Santa Barbara's involvement in a sobering center is they have a booking fee that they have to pay in order to check people into the county jail. So there was actually a direct financial incentive for the city of Santa Barbara in order to set up the sobering center because it allowed them to avoid that extra cost. And so, but that was something that in Isla Vista, and the way that the sheriff's department directly having jurisdiction, that financial incentive wasn't there, and in fact, it was generally looked at as just a pure cost. And so, a lot of the questions that would end up coming up around the sobering center were, how are we going to pay for it? Who's going to pay for it? Are we going to end up having some massive extra ticket that the person's going to have to pay for having used that service? Things it was really confusing. And in some sense, I would almost say disappointing, because it was turned a massive cost question as opposed to what was best for all the people involved. Another one of the big questions was where it was going to be located, and so with Doreen Farr, there was an opportunity. She kept offering, maybe use my office space that she at the time wasn't using. Now it's the IVCSD office, but at the time she wasn't really using her office space, and so maybe that could become the sobering center. And that turns into an argument in the community about, well, do I want to have a large both police looking presence next to what I am currently doing, and also some people were believing that, oh, well, bringing all the drunks back to this location is going to be bad for my business or bad for my, and so those arguments would end up spiraling out, trying to essentially, not in my backyard, the location of the sobering center. When I had added the sobering center to the resolution amendments that I had brought up, it was mentioned by Ryko Flako Rising, and the idea that as I kind of adapted into this framework was that the IVCSD spends some of its time doing accountability requests. So for example, hey, the county, can you please have somebody sent to our meeting in order to provide a status update on the streetlights? And then a few months later, can you provide a status update on the streetlights? Because we don't think anything's changed in the past 3 or 4 months. And so why aren't we doing something like that to the extent to which we're interested in the sobering center? And that's where you get an opportunity to learn about all of those complexities as they come back. It's like, okay, well, here's the reason why this has gotten kind of stuck is the following things. And then it provides the community an opportunity every few months again in order to try to help fix or bypass those roadblocks. And so it was less when I had put it in there, less about saying, well, we like exactly want the particular model of it as much as, because we're not really necessarily in the position ourselves to just do it. I mean, if nothing else, even if we built it, we can't convince the sheriff's department unilaterally to use it. And so it was more let's hold everyone accountable to the idea of moving in that direction. To the extent to which now, and then finally, now to go back to if people have either more questions about or feedback on wanting it, not wanting, concerns you have, it'd be a great opportunity to try to get some of those, and then we can bring that back into our discussions. So.
Jonathan, this is George.
Yeah.
Let me point out for the record, UCSB never took an official position on the sobering center, and I sat in on all of Doreen Farr's public safety committee meetings held in the Foot Patrol office. I think Jay accurately described 2 or 3 of the problems, probably the biggest one being who was going to actually run it. But there were myriad issues that came up from law enforcement's concern about the location, counselors who were going to be counseling, intervening in potential sexual assault investigations in the same building, and the list went on and on and on. It is I personally really support the idea and pushed for it while I was on Doreen's committee. But I will tell you that it is a thorny thicket to get into. And I applaud the fact that Jay wants to venture in there. I'll be right behind you.
Does anybody have any other input to us so that it could help us do our jobs. We don't want to like create all this in a vacuum, and we'll do other kinds of outreach, but this is just, we said we'd make this a monthly discussion at Ivcn. So it's also not a final opportunity to talk about this.
I do have a question. Go ahead, Melissa.
Well, mine was gonna be more like I have a question.
Yeah.
It feels hard to offer some feedback without having the full. It's almost like I would like to look at police reports or something from the past like decade and start to like pull out scenario examples of where it might have gone wrong, because I have such a different lived experience in my interactions with law enforcement than other folks do, right? And so I think it's hard for me to feel like I could weigh in on something without having like examples to go from of like where something might have been able to be handled differently or have a different kind of show up take place. I think often about 2 years ago when N-bomb was going around the community and that young man passed away who was having like a psychotic episode because he was so like not on this planet. And I think a lot back that that's like one of my examples in my brain that led to a tragic outcome that don't know if it could have been avoided because the response is what it had to be to deal with that certain thing. And like my brain wants to look at things like that and say, wow, this was not the outcome that anybody would have wanted in that circumstance. And could, if we backtracked, like, can we start to form some of these conversations around how something might have been able to play out differently? And it's interesting to try to build forward things, like thinking into the history of the Sobering Center and like all of the red tape that can pop up and all of the opinions about like where we're going to have it. And like, I can see how we could not make much progress in these conversations because of that we'll keep getting stuck on the same linchpins of what like didn't allow something to move forward before. And so it's like, can we start some of this by addressing those moments? Like, why didn't the Sobering Center move forward? So it sounds like from what George just said, there was UCSB not supporting it, but just confusion around like maybe how this would play out geographic location wise. And I'm thinking like, if we're going to get a cannabis, so there's all this work being done to zone for cannabis in Isla Vista, can't we like, there's got to be a way to zone for like a sobering center if we're able, it's so, again, it's, maybe I don't have enough knowledge to be able to really add in, but I have lots of questions around how a process could go that would make me feel like I could add in. Does that make sense? Kind of, sorry if that was like brain.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense, Melissa. And I just want to say one thing before we move forward, which is the big thing that's changed since the last time that the Sobering Center collaboration was undertaken is that the county has successfully implemented a Sobering Center. And they have a model for how it's staffed, how people are booked into it. And now the question is, how can we either one, well, first ensure that people in Isla Vista are being booked into it, and that people who are arrested for things like being drunk, have that as a strong option. And number two, if there's a need to expand and sort of make an additional one or grow the existing one.
I had a thought
Yeah,
that I want.
I guess Jeremy has a hand up real quick. I don't know if it was before Savannah or not, but
No,
maybe
I think Savannah was first. Go ahead, Savannah.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, so I've been in and out of these meetings the last several weeks, where there seems to be kind of like a regenesis of discussion around like public safety and community support and how we all each look out for each other when structures are in place. And so I'm really happy to hear that Sobering Center is coming back up. I've heard Community Watch be discussed here before in previous meetings. And then now I'm hearing this really awesome idea of getting some more data to kind of support, to inform us about what are the top public safety concerns or issues in the community. And so my first question is, I see a correlation or a connection between all these three, but specifically is how connected are they? And then two, specifically going back to the data point, similar to what Melissa was saying, I'm very curious to see what the campus, what UCPD, what other organizations already have as far as reports on public safety in Isla Vista, maybe of the last 5 years, maybe 10 years. I'll leave that up to the veterans of this community than I. But yeah, I mean, I think it's really hard to kind of steer the ship if we're not quite sure what the sea conditions are. Forgive my terrible metaphor there, but so yeah, just some thoughts.
Thank you.
I guess one of the hardest things in some sense that I've experienced, and kind of tie into some Melissa was saying there, and also this idea from Savannah about, like, what we need to know in order to steer the ship is that I almost feel like the biggest problems are not something that I directly am like, oh, well, this is the obvious fix. It's more that there's some misprioritization in some sense at the high level of where we spend our time and effort. And I mean, you can trace it back in some, I mean, like, we spend a lot of time staring at cannabis because there's a lot of money and controversy surrounding it. And particularly, I mean, like, I point at that money thing, right? It's just like, the fact that the human suffering and biased and particularly racially biased things don't lead to a giant dollar line on a bunch of lobbyists doing something means that we don't spend enough time staring at it. It's just really sad. And figuring out then how we can make it so that we spend as much time and effort staring at things like, how do we get the sobering center in place as we do on not here in this meeting or locally, but like, how do we get, like, even the board supervisors, everyone, in order to, like, care about these things as they do all of the effort that goes into things staring at cannabis, is like, how do we make that happen? And I had another thought, but it's losing me. Yeah, sorry. So Ash, it was stacked.
Yeah, I think talking about priorities is really a important point there. And, like, asking the people who have the power to do this, what are your priorities? Do they align with the community's priorities? But the thing I was gonna say is, this would be down the line, but who would be doing the booking, like it's not an arrest, but like the thing where you, like, take somebody from whatever they're doing to the sobering center. I think if it were uniformed police officers, that might be an equity issue, because some people are more vulnerable to, like, panicking in that kind of scenario. People with mental health challenges and/or people of color might be more likely to, like, freak out at that scenario and then be seen as somebody that is more serious and needs to go to the jail instead of sobering center. So I wonder I don't know if it could be CSOs or something even, I don't know. Yeah, but I think a conversation about what that would look like might be necessary. Thanks.
It is established already. There's a contract around for the sobering center, so we'd have to look at that. I believe right now it's sheriff's officers are the only ones that can bring someone in. I'm not positive, sheriff or police, but we'd have to look into that. I think that was one of the, I'll say, having been more intimately knowledgeable about the downtown Santa Barbara Sobering Center that was run by a nonprofit, funded by police, but police would bring them in, but people could check themselves in or could bring a friend. And it was up to the discretion of the intake person at the time, who was not an officer. So I thought it was a really good model, but that's gone away. And the new sobering center, I think, is a lot more structured in a sheriff type sense, but it's something to look into.
I can add, just from being a police officer in the city for 10 years, I used that sobering center very frequently. And the thing that I liked a lot about it is they also offered services for people who may wake up there a couple times a week or a month and realize that they might need some help dealing with alcohol issues and drug abuse issues. So that is another thing to consider with regards to that. My understanding is I thought that Santa Barbara PD was looking into using that Goleta location as well. I don't know the outcome of that, but I know they were looking at it after the city of Santa Barbara one was defunded. But not knowing about the outcome yet of that. But one other comment I wanted to make, just for those Spencer and I think Jay, with regards to
Spencer had to step out, so if you wanted to wait, if you specifically want to say something to Spencer, you might wait. Oh, great.
I'm here.
All right.
So you talking about feeling like making decisions in a bubble, I would recommend that you, I don't know if you're already doing it, but whenever appropriate, whenever it feels like a good idea, to maybe include talking with law enforcement about that a little bit. Some of the perspectives that we've gotten over the years may be able to assist in your path in doing things. Just a thought I was having while y'all were talking about it. And I'd personally be happy to talk with you and give you some of my opinions if they're helpful.
Thank you very much. I'm going to take you up on that. I think
Yeah.
Savannah had her hand up. Oh, unless Spencer wanted to jump in for something.
No, just thanks for that. We definitely do want to include you.
Savannah?
Yeah, just my last thought is, recognizing that all these things are connected. It seems like if there could be any sort of a strategy to be able to push forward on one and then also, but not pause on the other two. And that's really important because definitely I've seen time and time again in other positions in other fields, we always want to know more, we always want to learn more, but the actual action part doesn't necessarily fully ever be realized. And so recognizing that there is a need, how can we best move forward strategically to be able to start to set benchmarks or goals as with the Sobering Center or with this community watch idea, while we're also trying to become more informed about public safety issues in Isla Vista. And then with that too, like I said, I've been in and out, so I'm not quite sure exactly how deep this discussion is going, but I do really hope that the organizers of this data collection, this research project, definitely invite other organizations in to be able to be a part of the steering committee for this project, so that the data itself is not biased in ways that we wouldn't necessarily know. So yeah, that's all I've got.
Thank you, everybody. Anyone want to put like a last note on this before we go to
I
the
still
other?
have my hand up, Jonathan, since the last time you recognized me. That's all right, though. So I wanted to say, Savannah, thanks. I think you're awesome. I love all the points she's made about data and the three issues that you highlighted. As far as the Sobering Center, I know I've spoke on this before. I just have never really gotten a clear response as to where the conversation has gone about possibly using the neighborhood clinic as a double for a sobering center. I mean, it is tough to find space. There's very few places that come to mind, but there's already beds there. Anyway. And as far as funding, I don't know where this would fit into the conversation. But as somebody mentioned, I think Melissa maybe mentioned the dispensary. I think that's the correct terminology. And we've been talking about, how do we ensure that the potential issues that might arise with, maybe more with the dispensary locally and maybe more addiction issues or, other issues, unforeseeable issues, perhaps. Like what ways can the dispensary give back to the community? I wonder if, I know we're not talking about a sobering center for weed, but I wonder if some of the taxes could be diverted to fund the sobering center. Just a thought. That's it.
Thank you, Jeremy. Okay, let's go to the updates. So we have county, law enforcement, and associated students, and 15 minutes. So 5 minutes each. Before we get there, does anybody want to go first? Who has something more pressing, maybe that might take more time? Okay, well, county's first on here. Naomi, do you want to give any county updates really quick?
I don't think there's anything like hugely pressing other than my main announcement is, keeping track of COVID updates. Just go to the county's homepage, countyofsb.org. There's a big thing right in the middle of the homepage. It's like COVID resources. And also there's another link right there to stats. So I know there's been some concern in IV about IV cases. So it breaks down by area of the community. So go look at that. There's also a lot of resources at that link to COVID related support with the RISE program and with other support for businesses and guidance and what is the current governor's orders and all of that. And what are our current health officer orders? So it's sort of a one-stop shop. And I just encourage people to keep checking in on that and looking at that.
Thank you, Naomi. Law enforcement?
Try that one. Sorry about that. All right, sorry. So currently, community outreach team, we've been doing a lot of research in racial equity and putting together lists, as we've been talking about previous meetings, at looking some of our policies and procedures through the eye and the optics of more racial equity, and making recommendations to staff, and also that some of the things that they're already looking into. I won't go into a list of things. We don't have an official list of things that we're doing just yet. So we are starting to kind of identify things that may improve some things with regards to just practices from the past and in this moment. So and we are open to listening to anyone who has time to contact us and even give us some opinions. Even like what Ash just said previously with regards to the sobering center, any of these recommendations. I mean, some of these things that we might be able to put in, and we too are going to be operating from the vacuum if we don't include our community to work out some of our issues. So we are open to talking with people about that and trying to figure out a better way forward.
Thank you. And Justin, do you have anything?
Nothing really. I just, from the Foot Patrol side, I would say, and I'm always pretty open and honest with you guys, morale is probably at an all-time low. We talk about community policing and working together, but all we hear is let's get rid of the police, but then let's work together and get data from them. And so it's a very mixed message. I thought we had made quite a bit of progress over the last couple of years. We'd come up with a lot of cool programs, and we were working together. But all the Foot Patrol staff was trained in crisis intervention, mental health training, community policing, and I will say that almost all of them now have applied for transfer out of Isla Vista. And so maybe that was the goal of getting rid of us, but the problem is now when you call 911, you're going to get a cop from Santa Maria or Buellton or Carpinteria who knows nothing about the community and just doesn't know how we do things. And I think it's going to be a worse outcome than having our normal Foot Patrol staff. So I think the ideas that this group and other groups have are good and necessary. I just think that the language is breaking down these barriers that we've created. So I'm going to try and stick it out and be here for you guys, but it's tough hearing let's get rid of you, but oh wait, let's work together. So just letting you know from our side, it's tough.
Very interesting to hear that, and I'm sorry to the extent to which this is causing this kind of morale issue. I will say that, I mean, certainly with I use a lot of forceful wording, but I think a lot of what I'm talking about is often like funding reallocation, things like that. It's like when I think of abolish the police, I'm certainly not saying I want all of you to drop dead right now. You know, it's not like it's about looking at in a world like in the same sense that it would be really amazing if we could figure out how we could abolish mental health outreach issues, because we've solved the problem at some kind of like deeper level. And so a lot of the language around abolish is, I mean, it came from various activist groups, and you know, one of the defenses is, well, it's not their job to try to figure out the political language of a lot of aspects of these things, but it's to figure out how to solve some of the root causes of problems in ways that avoid it getting to the point where you need to have an armed police officer and show up at the location or to deal with that problem. It's figuring out ways of utilizing other opportunities before having an armed police officer show up at the problem. Because I would hope, and I feel like we have before, agreed on the idea that there are a lot of things that are currently we reach out to armed police officers to do that are things that you don't even really want to be doing, or things that you're not really in the position to do. And we can train you a lot, which, as you mentioned, you know, getting a lot of crisis intervention training and a lot of that thing. But at the end of the day, it's like, okay, well, maybe that was a kind of the wrong approach, because it still leads to somebody with a gun showing up at the location when they're and an opportunity for something to kind of spiral out of control. And that's not to say that person was horribly broken in that moment, but that the scenario of sending somebody with a gun to that moment maybe was the wrong overall approach. And so I guess I just want to be clear that the extent to which that I push on a lot of these things, it's not that I'm trying to say that, like, you know, cops fundamentally are incapable of being worked with, that I don't like working with you, that I don't want to. It's more that I would rather examine alternative approaches for the scenarios that seem like they don't require somebody showing up with a weapon.
Sure, and the way you just stated that is very helpful and progressive, and I think a good thing. But just earlier in this meeting, it was said, let's abolish the police. And so when we talk about moving forward, we're all good with that, but we hear the more inflamed language, and it coming from you in other meetings as well. And maybe it was just misstated or misunderstood, but yeah, it's tough hearing that every single day. And just earlier this week, we got a very nice letter from a Black family who we saved, a young Black man who was in a mental health crisis. And while we were out on the street for 2 hours, the things that were said to us from the Isla Vista residents were just unbelievable. Like, I can't even repeat them in this meeting. It was so bad. And the family of this man is saying, thank you so much for saving our son. And so it's just tough where other communities would say, hey, thanks for being out here and saving them. So it's a tough place to work right now, and we're trying. But I just want to let you guys know that I don't think it's been stated on our end. We've tried to be nice, and we've tried to go along with everything, but it's hard.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I kind of remember.
I just want to jump in, just in case you were referring to the comment that I made. I think you may have misheard what it was that I said. What I said was, we need to look past the rhetoric and look at what actions and changes are taking place. And I do want to say, for the record, for you and for Juan, I think the entire community here really does appreciate and the relationship that we have with you working together. And I think it's been said many times that we recognize the improvement that has taken place in your community outreach, and that goes not just for you, but for our friends at UCPD too. But I guess I just do want to say that it's really disheartening to hear, I guess, the way that it's being interpreted when the community tries to come together and suggest ways that we can make improvements. And it definitely it's a little saddening, I guess. And I hope that we can continue to work together and sort of, like I said, work past that language and start talking about actions.
And I will say that the original resolution I had the word abolish in it once, and I removed it from one of the subsequent drafts because of the confusion that it was causing, and that it wasn't, and to try to like focus on the specific things that I thought we should actually be trying to make. But I really want to kind of underscore a part, it's kind of related to what Spencer just said. I think you can simultaneously thank somebody for doing something great because in the position that they were put, and say, I don't think that sending you in that situation was the best thing that we could have done structurally. And so it's like, and it's almost, I even want to say that those thank yous are almost more heartfelt, because it's like, this wasn't necessarily the thing that you were best trained to do. This isn't necessarily the thing that you are, that maybe even you had originally signed up to do, thinking that you would do the kinds of help you would provide in the community. And yet you managed to figure out how to succeed in that situation. Thank you so much for that success. But simultaneously, can we work together to figure out how to not send you in that situation in the future and still have success? So,
yeah, well, this is a really good discussion. It is good to maybe also talk one-on-one, but let's just grab the AS update, and then we can head to the county hearing, which is also really important for everyone to be on.
As for AS, the 5 execs and the GSA Executive Council, we're all having chief of police interviews tomorrow and next week. And we came up with our own questions to assess the 2 candidates. As to the COVID-19 updates, we're using the information provided by the county to send out a social media campaign of updating everyone every time I get an email from the county with the number of active cases in IV, to make sure people know how many new cases there are, how many recovered, and what's exactly going on with Corona in our community. That's pretty much it from AS.
Great, thank you. Okay, well, everyone take a 5-minute break and get on the county meeting if you're able to. Have a good one, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day. Thanks, Jonathan, for hosting.
Thanks, everyone.